Well, so first I would second in part what Brian said. I think it's clear to all of us that a key to meeting the challenge of climate change will be finding ways to drive innovation and to drive innovation into the marketplace. And I want to just make a few comments about the measures we have, the levers we have to do that, and focus in particular on diffusion. We need both. We need new technologies, new ideas, but most importantly, we need to make sure that they really get into the marketplace, that they're driven down the so-called learning curve to become cost competitive and to take their share in the market. And that's an urgent need, because if we're going to have any chance of staying below 2 degrees, and many people think the target should be even more aggressive than that, but if we have any chance of staying below 2 degrees, we need to find a way to make these technologies penetrate the market very quickly and to make these industries grow very quickly. So that's the challenge. And I want to, just building on comments that we've heard over the course of this first day, just highlight a couple of ways in which that can be done. The first is national action. And I think the important thing to recognize about national level action is that it can have both national and global impact. What major markets do in their own countries can really have a ripple effect across the entire global sector. And we have proven tools. We have policy measures that we know work. One example is appliance efficiency standards and auto fuel efficiency standards. Those have been used to good effect in many parts of the world, and they clearly drive innovation into the market. A second example used here in Europe, also in China, is to set targets for the share of renewables in the power base. Again, forcing utilities, power providers to invest in renewable energy and helping to drive those costs down the learning curve. Another good example is feed-in tariffs, pioneered by Germany and Denmark here in Europe. Now, the second dimension to national action that I want to highlight is how public dollars are spent. A good starting point would be to stop spending them on fossil fuel subsidies. Something like $300 billion a year currently go into subsidies in the energy sector, almost entirely to fossil fuels and also to nuclear power. But beyond that, there is clearly a need to make a sharp increase in the investment in public sector R&D. Public sector investment in R&D in the energy field fell a lot over the last 15 or 20 years. The International Energy Agency estimates it should grow by 2 to 10-fold. Our guess is that tenfold is a better estimate, but in any case, a sharp increase in public investment. And finally, in terms of national action, I want to just highlight what has been said earlier, which is that the stimulus packages now being implemented, especially in the US and China, but also to some extent here and of course in Korea, are huge opportunities to invest in both driving innovation as well as building the infrastructure that makes innovation possible. Most importantly, so-called smart grids, which make all sorts of renewable technologies and energy efficiency innovations work. Okay, the second domain I wanted to mention briefly is business. There's been a lot of talk about the importance of business driving efficiencies in its own operations, and that's clearly crucial. But there's huge opportunity for business to innovate in areas where it can have transformational impact. And the trick is getting to companies to think in those terms. A couple of days ago in China, I met with the head of sustainability for Walmart. And Walmart's had a lot of attention in the last couple of years about driving efficiency in its own operations, investing in solar cells to put on their roofs, building more efficient trucks, and so forth. But what they've come to see is that the huge lever they have, the huge two levers they have, are to drive efficiency in their supply chain, because for most of their suppliers, they're the single biggest customer, and to drive innovation in their supply chain in terms of the products that are produced, and to bring those innovations to their customer base, because they have the world's largest customer base. And it's focusing on those levers that really gives Walmart a chance to drive innovations and to drive them into the marketplace in a very powerful way. There are similar examples in other companies. Dennis from our staff mentioned earlier this morning, you can look at the challenge of airline travel and talk about efficiency and talk about biofuels, but the huge opportunity is to talk about alternatives to getting on a jet. And when getting to a meeting means getting on a video conference, better for your life, better for your pocketbook, and better for the climate, instead of getting on the plane. So there are those kinds of opportunities in which business can play a huge and very profitable role in driving transformational innovation. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that there is a role for global action here. There was a debate before lunch about whether there needed to be a big chunk of money put on the table, and I think the obvious and short answer is yes. I think the only way we get to a global deal is if the OECD countries make a big time and reliable commitments to funding technology transfer and mitigation in developing countries, especially, well, including emerging economies. That can come from multiple sources, but some of it's going to be public funds that are pooled to really make a significant strategic investment in helping those countries get onto a low-carbon development path. Our suggestion is that we look at technology action programs as part of making that happen. That is, that under the Climate Convention, we find ways to come together in a coordinated effort to tackle key innovation challenges, as was done so successfully under the Ozone Treaty. But in any case, that will be another important part of the puzzle.